Are the Oklahoma Sooners going to ever get any luck?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Go place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The latest injury report reveals no good news for the Oklahoma Sooners. We thought heading into this week that maybe we'd get Deion Burks back, but that just ain't happening. Brent Venables said he was day-to-day earlier in the week. He was listed as questionable on the initial injury report. And then on Thursday night's injury report, he was listed as doubtful, downgrading Deion Burks for Saturday's game against Ole Miss. And if I'm being honest, I'm basically expecting him to be ruled out either Friday or Saturday morning. And again, Oklahoma just can't catch a break on the injury front. And I know we talked about this in our Thursday show, and we said, hey, believe it when we see it, right? Whenever a Sooners wide receiver, one of their top 5 wide receivers, steps foot on the football field, then we'll be excited, right? Well, here we are again. It's another week. It's another week without Deion Burks, who hasn't played since the Tennessee game, still is Oklahoma's leading wide receiver in catches, yards, and touchdowns. If that shows you anything about the issues, is probably the best way to put it, that Oklahoma's had with its offense, which has been terrible. So Deion Burks likely to be out. I'd be shocked if he played against Ole Miss after being downgraded to doubtful. From what I understand, maybe he practiced once early in the week and then just hasn't been able to practice again. It's unfortunate, man. It really, really is unfortunate that all of these wide receivers have been down and out, that you can't really know what your offense could be because of all of the inexperience that you've had at wide receiver. Again, the offensive line has been as big of an issue, especially against South Carolina, especially against Texas. They've had much less time. I mean, it was able to hold up at times against Auburn. It was able to hold up at times against Tennessee, but there just hasn't been enough consistency up front with the offensive line for whoever's playing wide receiver to matter as much. Now, your wide receivers got to help you out and catch the ball when it's thrown to them, be competitive when the ball is in the air, but still you've got to have a lot more help along the offensive line. So what does this mean for Oklahoma? Well, hopefully it means you get more Jacob Jordan. And if there was anything that I was slightly concerned about with Deion Burks coming back, is that it would limit Jacob Jordan's snaps out of the slot. He played 100% of his 47 snaps last week in the slot. And so I don't know if he's going to start. He should start. He was, and probably has been, the biggest bright spot in the offense over the last few weeks. That 6-catch, 86-yard game where he found ways to get open, found ways to settle down in the soft spots of the zone, made a big catch down the sideline on, I can't remember what the down and distance was, but it was a long down and distance. And he gets beyond the yardage marker and catches the ball on the sideline. Jackson Arnold has to fit it into a tight window. It was that rollout that Arnold did to the right sideline. And I mean, it was a great throw by Arnold, and it was a great catch by Jordan to stay in bounds and complete it. And you've needed somebody at wide receiver, whether it was a Brennan Thompson or a J.J. Hester, Jaquez Petaway, or Zion Reagans or Zion Kearney or Ivan Carrion. We needed somebody to step up and go make plays. And Jacob Jordan found a way to go make plays. And that's what you need. You need somebody to continue to go out there and do that. So I really hope that Emmett Jones, Joe John Finley, Kevin Johns, the offensive staff saw that and said, hey, you're our starting slot wide receiver until you show us you can't do it. So big opportunity for Jacob Jordan this week against a really, really tough Ole Miss defense. And you're going to need somebody to go out there and make plays. You need it everywhere. I mean, you need somebody to go out and step up and step into a role. I think this is another tough matchup against a really good defense. We've seen how Oklahoma's offense has struggled against really good defenses, whether it was Tennessee, whether it was Texas, South Carolina, and now Ole Miss. I mean, you're going to have some struggles in this game. And we'll talk about it in just a second where Ole Miss ranks in some things. But you're going to offensively, the offensive line has to step up. You've got to be better. You've got to play with some pride, and they've got to find a way to bounce back from that performance against South Carolina. Otherwise, it's going to be another rough day for Jackson Arnold. And it could be another day in which you see multiple quarterbacks play. I hope that's not the case. I really don't. I don't want to see the quarterback carousel happening every single week with the Sooners. You want to see somebody go in there and seize the job and play consistent football, protect the football, and find ways to make big plays in the passing game, because you're going to need to find ways to make plays in the passing game. Ole Miss is really, really good up front with Walter Nolan and Princely Umani-Malian. This is a really, really tough defense. And so Jackson Arnold, man, it's going to be quite the contest and quite the challenge for the young quarterback. But maybe we find out a little bit more about him. Maybe Joe John Finley's offense works better with Jackson Arnold. We'll find out a lot about Joe John Finley's offense. I believe it's going to have more Jeff Lebby vibes to it than what we saw out of Seth Luttrell. I think he's going to have a little bit more feel for how to best utilize the talent on this team, because that was as big of an issue as anything. Is there didn't seem to be adjustments for the talent and for the personnel that you had on the team. There didn't seem to be adjustments for the issues that you had on the team, where sometimes like the best way to get a quarterback going is to use the short game, to use up tempo and keep defenses off balance by just peppering them with shorter passes and doing the Tom Brady thing where you just nickel people to death all the way down the field. There was a time in Tom Brady's career, I would say like 2010s-ish, 12, where New England could not run the ball very consistently. They didn't have a consistent running game. Now, when they got to the playoffs with LeGarrette Blount, again, not exactly remembering the years on this, but they were able to find a running game. But they would just use the short passing game as an extension of the running game. They would hit people for 3, 4, 5 yards at a time, 6 yards at a time, use those wide receiver screens to just make Tom Brady really, really efficient when they might not have been good up front or might not have had a good running game. And it worked, as opposed to expecting to be able to win down the field on a regular basis. Now you have to win downfield some, but use that short intermediate passing game to soften up the Ole Miss defense and then take your shots. Just create positive plays. And the run game is going to be huge for this. You've been able to create positive plays each of the last 2 weeks against Texas and against South Carolina. Again, not big yardage days, not big efficiency days, but better efficiency days, better yardage days, better yards per carry. I mean, Javonte Barnes had 4.1 yards per carry against South Carolina. That's by far his best day of the year. And so if you can do that again, if you can replicate that against Ole Miss and their defensive front, that's going to help Jackson Arnold. It's going to help the offense. It's going to keep them ahead of the chains. But easier said than done. We'll talk about what Ole Miss brings to the table here coming up next on Locked On Sooners. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. If you sign up today and you can get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks have made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. I think Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards next week. Christian McCaffrey run for more than 75.5 yards. I mean, he's been injured. But will Brock Purdy throw for more or less than his passing total? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, you can download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode, again, was brought to you by PrizePicks, also going to be brought to you by FanDuel. We're going to get into some SEC picks against the spread coming up here in a second as well. I thought it was interesting. Oklahoma, we knew that they were going to have a really, really tough schedule on their hands throughout this whole season because it's just a really, really tough schedule. And it's turning out, not only is it tough offensively, it's going to be a challenge for Oklahoma's defense, but man, the defenses that Oklahoma's facing is just ridiculous. Got to get a sip as Oklahoma's heading to the sip. So I asked the question to our Locked On Sooners Insider program in relation to, what they believed Oklahoma had to do in this game and how they could go and win the game. And I mean, so much of it comes back to creating turnovers. They got to create turnovers. They got to protect the football. Ole Miss, look at the tail of the tape a little bit. Ole Miss is the number 2 ranked scoring defense, allowing just 10.6 points per game, just behind Texas, who is at 9.7. And I know we've said Ole Miss hasn't really played anybody. They haven't. They're 1-2 in SEC play. At the same time, they're pretty good up front. They're pretty good in the secondary. They're pretty good at their linebacker core. So even though maybe the level of competition in the non-conference wasn't very strong, listen, this is a good Ole Miss team. We're not going to sit here and sell you some story that Ole Miss is not good. They're a really good team. But the stats might be a little bit misleading. But you go look at the ESPN SB Plus rankings that does, they do projections and they run through simulations to help determine who the best teams are and use their analytic profiles and all that. Ole Miss is the number 3 ranked SB Plus team, number 7 on offense, number 6 on defense, number 3 on special teams. That's just behind Ohio State and Texas. Oklahoma, they come in at number 31. Number 69 on offense, number 17 on defense, and number 31 on special teams. So Ole Miss is going to have the edge pretty much everywhere. On turnovers, again, Ole Miss only averages 1.6 turnovers per game. So that creates an opportunity for you to, listen, if you can protect the football against Ole Miss, you're going to have a chance to stay in this game. In our prediction segment on Thursday's show, I might not have been given the Oklahoma defense enough credit. And I think they'll actually be able to hold Miss in check a little bit better than giving up 31 points. And that's if the Oklahoma offense protects the football. So much of what's happened the last 2 weeks against South Carolina and against Texas is that Oklahoma hasn't protected the football. They've turned the ball over like crazy. And those turnovers ultimately led to points. Those turnovers led to scoring opportunities. I mean, they had 2 turnovers against Texas on back-to-back drives in the second quarter that took a game that was relatively within reach. I think it was 14-3. And you turn the ball over twice, and Texas takes a 21-3 lead in the halftime, and the game's over. Remember, that was a game that was like 7-3 with like in the second quarter with roughly 5-6 minutes left to play. Texas scores, and then you turn it right back over to them. Texas scores again. You turn it back over to them. And then I think they missed a field goal at the end of the second half. But the game got away from you because of turnovers against South Carolina. Game got away from you because of turnovers on the first 3 possessions. You can't have that. And so if Oklahoma is able to protect the football, play, listen, I know I've said I want Jackson Arnold to go sling it, Michael Hawkins to go sling it. I want them to. I want them to go throw the ball when it's open and it's available for them to complete a pass. Be aggressive down the field. Hit Brennan Thompson like you did last week when you hit Brennan Thompson for a 54-yard touchdown. Take some shots. Also, protect the football. When you feel that pressure coming and you got to eat a sack, just eat a sack. That's better than turning the ball over in your half of the field and then they have an easy scoring opportunity against your defense. Because, listen, Oklahoma's defense is still one of the better defenses in the nation. It may not have the numbers that Ole Miss has. But if we really look at it, okay, against Tennessee, they allowed 25 points. Yeah, not great. Against Auburn, they allowed 20. That's good enough to win, right? Against Texas, a lot of those points came off of turnovers and came from giving Texas an opportunity on your side of the field. Against South Carolina, obviously, 14 points directly related to turnovers Another 10, I think, directly related to turnovers. You gave them short fields. They gave them opportunities to score. So 24 points against South Carolina that you can attribute to Oklahoma turning the football over. Can't do it. So if you go into this one and you're even in the turnover battle, if you're even in the turnover battle and you've turned it over, say twice, but you've also created 2 turnovers, I don't think that you can win. It's got to be Oklahoma wins the turnover battle or you're even at 0-0 in the turnover battle, because you cannot afford to give Ole Miss short fields. You can't put your defense behind the 8 ball and let Ole Miss play from the 40-yard line. That's just not going to be a recipe for victory in this one. You look at some of the other stats here. Ole Miss is the number 1 ranked team in rushing defense, allowing just 66 yards per game. They're allowing only 2 yards per carry per game. So as much as we want to say lean on the run game, take pressure off your quarterbacks, do what the offensive line does best and run the ball, that's not going to be a great recipe for success either. But they allow 222 yards passing per game, which ranks 78th. LSU was able to get to him for over 300 yards passing. Again, Garrett Nussmeier, who's playing really, really good ball for a 6-1 LSU team that's won 6 in a row. So we're not going to sit here and pretend that Jackson Arnold's going to all of a sudden go off and throw for 300 yards. But if they can find some plays and they can find some efficiency in the passing game, there's potentially some room for success through the air. Is Jackson Arnold going to go throw for 300? Probably not. But if he can throw for more than 200, 250, and protect the football, again, that gives Oklahoma's offense a chance to score some points and stay in the game. Again, a lot of hope. I appreciate that everybody in the YouTube comment sections was enjoying the hope yesterday, and that's really what it comes down to at this point, is what you've seen out of Oklahoma's offense that's averaging just 11.75 points per game in SEC play is not conducive to feeling confident about where it's going or what the possibilities are for this offense. They haven't been good. They haven't been good in SEC play. You got a couple big plays out of Michael Hawkins against Tennessee and against Auburn. And then you got a couple big plays out of Jackson Arnold against South Carolina. And that's really it. That's really all you have, is maybe a handful of big plays that's created some points for you. But you haven't found consistent efficiency where you've been able to move the ball every single drive. Most drives have been a big time struggle for this offense. But for the defense, I mean, the defense is what's going to give you an opportunity to stay in this game. And so I might have predicted that Ole Miss get to 31. The more I thought about that, I was like, oh man, that might be a little bit disrespectful to Oklahoma's defense. And so I'm leaning more 20-24 that Oklahoma's defense is going to be able to hold them to. Again, this is assuming that Oklahoma protects the football, which might be assuming too much, given what we've seen the last couple of weeks. At the same time, Oklahoma's defense has played good ball, despite the offensive struggles, despite the offensive inefficiencies, despite the turnovers that the offense has allowed. The defense has been able to play some pretty good ball, pretty inspired football. And I think because of the leadership that you have on that side of the ball, you're going to continue to see them play at a really, really high level throughout the season. So we're going to get to some SEC picks. Again, this is a nice little bonus episode. I hope you go check out the Locked On crossover with Jay and with Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss. It's going to be a fantastic show that's going to give you all of the insight and breakdown on both sides of the matchup and the top storylines as well. We're going to go through some SEC picks against the spread coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. NHL is off and running. The NBA is up and going as well, and the NFL season is going strong. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Again, Joe, go check out that Locked On crossover edition with Jay and with Steven of Locked On Ole Miss, giving you all the top storylines heading into the matchup and breaking it down ahead of Saturday. It's an 11 a.m. game for Oklahoma down in Oxford. And I know a lot of Oklahoma fans are excited to get down there and check out the Ole Miss tailgating experience down there in the Grove. And so I'll be excited to see pictures and hear what people are having to say. We're going to be in Oklahoma. I know Jay's there. Jay and his wife are making the trip down to Oxford. That's why you're getting a little bit of a special edition here from me. Wanted to cover the Deion Burks injury situation and the opportunity that Jacob Jordan has ahead of him. Also, right now, this is going to be a big matchup. Listen, I know we've not seen a lot out of Oklahoma to warrant much confidence. And as we go through some picks against the spread, I find myself with Oklahoma being a little bit more confident than I probably should be. And I don't know what to do with that. And maybe it's the coffee hitting on a Friday morning. Maybe it's just the hopium building within me. Maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe it's the offensive coordinator change I think is going to spark something. Maybe it's just belief in this defense that can keep it close. But we're looking at a line right now, according to FanDuel. Oklahoma is sitting at a 20.5 underdog, 20.5 point underdog. I kind of like Oklahoma plus the points on this. And I know that's crazy. I really do. I know it's crazy. Even in my initial prediction where I had Oklahoma 30 or I had Ole Miss 31-13, hey, Oklahoma's still within 20 points. And as I've reflected a little bit more on that and maybe think Oklahoma's defense can keep them to 24 or less, I think Oklahoma has a chance. So take Oklahoma plus the points. I know, again, that sounds crazy, but listen, these big spreads against Oklahoma's defense just don't make a whole lot of sense to me. It'd be different if it was 16 or 10, then I might be able to lean more Ole Miss. But with 20, that's big. I think Oklahoma is going to be able to create enough offense to put some points on the board. They're not going to have this big offensive explosion all of a sudden. Maybe they will. Hey, you never know. Crazier things have happened, right? Like Purdue putting 49 points on the board after firing their offensive coordinator. It's not an apples to apples thing. It's apples and oranges. The situations and circumstances are very different at both schools, but you never know, right? It's angels in the outfield, right? It's the kid sitting in the front row by the dugout saying it could happen. I don't know. I just, the spread is so big that I like Oklahoma. We're looking at several other games on the schedule for SEC. There's some really fun matchups this week in SEC football, including Arkansas and Mississippi State. Arkansas is going on the road to face the Mississippi State Bulldogs and Jeff Lebby and Michael Van Buren at quarterback. And again, this is one of those that feels crazy. Arkansas is favored by 6.5 points in this game, according to FanDuel. And initially, I'm leaning Arkansas because they've been so good against the spread this year. But I think Mississippi State is playing some really good football right now. They only lost by 10 to Texas A&M. They've been really good against the spread the last couple of weeks. And it's a team that has gotten better with Michael Van Buren at quarterback. And I just seem to like them. Arkansas is 5-2 against the spread, though. Mississippi State is 4-3 against the spread. But again, 2 covers in the last couple of weeks. Again, the offense is playing good ball. The defense is playing good ball. So it's on the road. I really feel like I like the way that Mississippi State's trending. Arkansas on a big opportunity last week against LSU. They get blown out. Give me the Bulldogs. Give me Jeff Lebby fighting Bulldogs against plus the 6.5 points against Arkansas. Another one that the spread just doesn't make sense to me, and that's Missouri and Alabama. Alabama's favored by 16.5 points against the Tigers. And listen, this has been a very up and down Missouri team. They got blown out by Texas A&M. I don't know that Alabama is in a position right now to be a 16.5 point spread over anybody. Like Alabama is 3-4 against the spread. Missouri is 4-3 against the spread. This one is in Tuscaloosa against an Alabama team that is coming off the loss to Tennessee. They've got the loss to Vanderbilt. They had the close game against Georgia. As SEC play has gone for the Crimson Tide, they've not been what we thought they could be. I mean, in non-conference play, they were outscoring everybody by big numbers, but they had the close loss to Georgia or the close win over Georgia, excuse me. They won by 7 in that one. They lost to Vanderbilt by 5. They beat South Carolina by just 2. And then they lost to Tennessee by 7. Been playing a lot of close games. I think this is going to be another close game. Brady Cook showed his toughness. I mean, he coming back from the hospital after an ankle injury and getting back on the field, leading 2 late touchdown drives to give Missouri a big comeback win over Auburn. I mean, that's the stuff that inspires teams to play much better than most people would project them to play. So give me Missouri plus the 16.5 against Alabama. Call me crazy, but I think Mizzou keeps this one close. LSU at Texas A&M, the Aggies are favored by minus 1.5 points. This is essentially a pick'em game. And when you consider that LSU is going on the road, that gives Texas A&M 3 points automatically. So really, Vegas is seeing that LSU is actually a favorite in this one. The 3 points being the road difference. But I like LSU. Texas A&M played really good ball. They're really good defensively. They run the ball really well. Connor Weigman has played really, really good ball, but there's just something something's cooking right now in Baton Rouge. And there's a lot of good stuff cooking in Baton Rouge, but I love the way that Caden Durham's running the ball. They've leaned into their true freshman running back, and they've put it all on his shoulders in the run game because he's been very dynamic. He's created big plays. He's been efficient in the run game for them as well. He's been efficient in the pass game. He's been really, really effective for that offense. Garrett Nussmeier is playing good football as well. The LSU defense is starting to find itself after being terrible last year. Now under Blake Baker, they're really good. And I think this is going to be a close game, but I think ultimately LSU is going to pull out the win. I just think maybe they're a little bit further along than Texas A&M is right now. And then you've got another big one. Texas goes on the road to face the Vanderbilt Commodores. Again, a team that doesn't make sense this year. The Vanderbilt Commodores, they're surprising everybody. But Texas is 18.5 point favorites at Vanderbilt. Texas right now is Texas is 5-2 against the spread. Vanderbilt's 5-2 against the spread. Again, they got the big win over Alabama. They got the big win over Virginia Tech early in the season. And Vanderbilt is looking really good. Texas, I think they bounce back and they have a better offensive day, obviously. But I think that the way that Vanderbilt plays football, they keep games close. They give their defense time to breathe with the way that they possess the football. And I think Texas's defense is better than Alabama's defense, but I think that Diego is just playing really good football. Diego Pavia is playing good football. And I think that they're going to be able to keep it within 18.5 points. Could Texas win by double digits, win by 2 touchdowns? Absolutely. I think they have the talent. They've got the coaching that they could do that, but Vanderbilt's well coached as well. And they've been able to get the most out of that roster all season long. It's going to be a hostile Vanderbilt crowd. They got people believing there in Nashville. And so that's going to be a fun one to watch, but give me Vanderbilt plus 18.5. And then the final SEC game on the schedule, we have Auburn at Kentucky. Kentucky's favored by 7.5 points. Is that right? That might be 2.5. My handwriting's gotten not great, but it's not as big of a spread as I would think, given Auburn's struggles. I think that, Kentucky's obviously had some issues of their own. And sorry, I'm just trying to find this spread real quick because this is great podcasting. My apologies. Yeah, it's Kentucky minus 2.5. Is the favorite. And I just like Kentucky at home. I think Auburn, again, turns the ball over way too much. Kentucky's defense is pretty good. And so give me Kentucky minus the 2.5. I think they probably win by a touchdown or more. I think they have a bounce back. Again, Auburn's got a pretty good defense, but Auburn's just too inefficient on offense, and they turn the ball over way too much for my liking. But that's going to do it for this special edition of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Also, go check out Locked On SEC to get you ready for a big SEC weekend, and Locked On College Football for all of the happenings around the sport of college football. As Spencer McLaughlin says, the greatest game on planet Earth. But follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel as well. Myself at John 9 Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all the social media profiles, platforms as well. Go read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. But until next time, I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.